Peace, family. What's going on? That's right, I'm back. I really didn't have no choice because of all of the wonderful support that I got on the last video. You know, the comment section was amazing. And, you know, it inspires me because there are times where it gets real dark in the basement. You know what I'm saying? And those comments and that gratitude that y'all dug out of your heart and gave with love shined the light and was able to inspire me to keep going. So with all of the success of the last video, which I had no idea was about to happen, of course we had to come through with the follow through. You know what I mean? So I just want to let all of y'all know that we're going to dig a little deeper today. I hope y'all could keep up, but I'm going to still kind of keep it as simple as I can, you know? All right. So first of all, what I want to talk about is the fact that we are something that you would consider a hollow biome. What is a hollow biome? A hollow biome represents a human being, as we are an organism, that consists of not just the cells that make our body up. You know, when you was in school and you heard about eukaryotic cells, those were the animal cells. That's what our body is made up of. And then we learn as we get older to be sterilized, that everything's supposed to be pure and clean and crispy. Well, that's not exactly how it happens. When you look inside the body, what you're going to find out is that bacteria outnumber our cells 10 to 1, and viruses outnumber bacteria 10 to 1. That's right. We are composed of animal cells, bacteria, fungi, as well as viruses. So just like we have something called a human genome that denotes the DNA that's in our cells, we also have a microbiome that represents all of our bacteria, and we have a virome. A virome? Yes, we actually have genetics inside of our body that are designed to build viruses inside. So what does that mean exactly? What that means is, given the proper circumstances, you have the ability to form viruses inside your system. And as an example, there was a study. There was a whole research paper that they got where they ended up studying over 8,000 individuals. Out of these 8,000 individuals, none of them had any type of viral infection. But once they took a blood sample and studied their blood, 92% of them had viruses all inside of their bloodstream. Now, how's that possible? If somebody didn't get infected by a virus, then what is viruses doing inside? So that's exactly what took place. The body was able to create those viruses from within inside of the individual. So what is the catalyst that creates this? It's you. Of course, if you're the one making the virus, then you got to be catalyst. So I know the first thought people are going to think is, oh man, you know, it's the way you're eating and, you know, and things like that. But not exactly. Not exactly. It's actually a little bit deeper. It has more to do with your environment. Do you remember what Dr. Sebi used to say in regards to the polar bear and the gorilla? Do you know what Dr. Sebi used to say about butt naked mama? He would always refer to not only the individual, but the environment that the individual resides in. Because we look at ourselves as just ourselves, but if you remove your environment, you're just in a white space with no sound, with no color, with no depth perception. You'll go insane. So our environment, the hills, the grass, the trees, the bugs, the birds, the sky, the clouds, the wind, all of the elementals, they all represent part of who we are. They're an extension of who we are. So if you're in an environment that's not conducive to you and your genetics, then what your body is going to do is going to create the circumstance to put you back where you came from. Put you back where you came from? What that mean? They're going to push you back in your mama? Yeah, exactly. But not your mama, Mother Earth. Because when most people transcend, whether they get incinerated, cremated, so to speak, or they get put back into the soil, regardless, they get the dust, the elements that make them up, or returned back to the earth. So if you're not using your system correctly to pursue whatever purpose that you were here for, and you're giving signals to your body that you do not want to pursue, then your body's going to start to break down, decompose. And that's where disease stems from, the decomposition, the return of your spacesuit back to where it came from. Now, a lot of people don't understand viruses. And, in the last video, we talked about the fact that, viruses, you got to see them kind of like a flash drive, but people don't think about the scale. See, when you think about a virus, I don't want you to just think about the huge blown up picture that you see on the internet or on the news. No, I want you to go a little deeper. I want you to think about the earth. Think about all the pictures of the earth that you've seen in your life. That big sphere is huge, right? Then I want you to think about somebody arriving to Earth in a small little spaceship. That RNA that's inside the virus that carries all that information would be the size of you. And that ship would be the size of the envelope that the virus encapsulates that particular RNA in or you in. So when you think of a scale of a virus to a cell, I want you to think of you to Earth. Now you could think of how many viruses can infect one cell. Just take a minute and just breathe on that. And something that small, how do you get rid of? Shoot, most of the things that you would even use to get rid of it is probably too big to deal with something that small. So what is the main mechanism that's being pushed on everybody right now in regards to a cure? Well, from what I heard, it's something called hydroxychloroquine. Now, anybody that comes out on the television and say, oh, I got a cure for COVID-19, or I got a cure for the coronavirus, everybody's going to be all ears. And when they say that it works, not only are people going to be all ears, but they're going to rush to go get this stuff. But before you rush, I want you to do the same thing that I would encourage you to do when you go to the supermarket. When you go to the supermarket to purchase anything, that box, that bag, that can, I need you to look on the back at the ingredients and see what it's made of. If you can't identify those ingredients, if you can't pronounce those ingredients, I suggest that you just stay away. And you just deal with the things that you can recognize. Now, when you look at the ingredients of hydroxychloroquine, you're going to find out that it's composed of something called quinine. Quinine has a 500-year history on this planet in respect to what? In respect to colonialization, colonization. Wait a minute, KT. What does a drug that's getting pumped for coronavirus got to do with people colonizing the world? Well, when you think of me, I got a little melanin in my skin, right? People that share my genetics come from a region of the planet that you would call the equatorial region. We're found inside the 20s. No, not the 1920s. I'm talking about latitude. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and the equator. You find all the Caribbean islands in there. You find areas of South America and Mexico and Central America, goes through Africa. But everywhere, every geographical location that falls in that area has similar plants, similar wildlife, similar flora, similar fauna that grows inside that area. And what that area provides is long hours of sunlight, UVB energy to pump up this vitamin D. But for people that don't have as much melanin, areas like that with a lot of sun can be very detrimental to them. Not to mention just a tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforests have mosquitoes, bugs, all types of organisms and plants that could transfer certain chemicals into them that make it very difficult for them to penetrate deep inside of those woods. So when there were colonialists going around the world trying to oppress people, it was difficult for them to do that in the beginning because they couldn't penetrate the deep jungle until they fell in Peru and found the cinchona bark, which is also known as Jesuits bark today. And they found out that they could use that as a cure for malaria. Now, it's so interesting that malaria is something that's talked about a lot right now, malaria drugs, because malaria, the word doesn't have anything to do with a mosquito. It actually means mal and area, which means bad air. And if you look around, everyone's suffering from not being able to breathe properly. So if you go back to this hydroxychloroquine story, the people who have been taking over the world have been using this quinine as a means to colonize for a long period of time. What's interesting about this quinine, especially hydroxychloroquine, is it has adverse effects. It has negative effects on certain groups of people, specifically people that got melanin. It binds to the melanin. And by it binding to the melanin, you know what else it does? It causes something called retinopathy, which is a disease of your retina. So to make a long story short, hydroxychloroquine equates to blindness. So do you want to get rid of corona so bad that you want to give up your eyesight? I don't know about that. But see, that specifically deals with people that are melanated. Another problem with hydroxychloroquine in terms of its adverse effects is the fact that if you have a certain deficiency of an enzyme, it's going to cause anemia. Now, what is anemia? Anemia is a situation where you're not getting enough oxygen to be transported throughout your body by way of iron. And why does any of that matter? Because every time I inhale oxygen, that oxygen goes down my trachea into my bronchial tubes, into my alveoli, which are enveloped in a network and web of capillaries that are bringing oxygen poor blood to my lungs. That oxygen poor blood brought to my lungs now gets enriched with large quantities of oxygen that I'm inhaling through the red blood cell. Inside the red blood cell is hemoglobin, and the hemoglobin is what is responsible for carrying that oxygen. Just think about a kid going to school. When he's young, he has to get on a school bus, right? He has his book bag on, and inside his book bag, he got books. So he gets on the bus so he can travel to school. Once he gets to school, he gets off the bus, goes to his classroom. He pulls out his books out of his book bag. Now he can study in his class. So the whole reason why he has the book bag is to get the books to his classroom so he could do study. Well, your hemoglobin, okay, is similar to that book bag that carries books, but that book is really oxygen. What's the school? The school is your tissues. And what is the bus? The bus is the red blood cell. And what is the road? The road are the blood vessels. So the red blood cell is driving down the road of the blood vessels, headed to school, or rather the tissues, right? In which the child gets off the bus with his book bag and he goes inside of the class and he pulls out his book. Now he can use his oxygen. Well, with anemia, you have low iron. And when you have low iron, you don't have the ability to bind that oxygen to the hemoglobin. See, it has to bind to it. Okay? It has to bind to it. And if you don't have enough of that iron, then you're not going to be able to do that. Now, the problem with COVID-19 is not necessarily the fact that people are not getting enough iron in. It's the fact that they don't have the iron inside of the hemoglobin any longer. This is why people are breathing, but they're not able to get oxygen to their tissues, so they're suffering from what? Hypoxia, another term. Hypoxia means suffocation. So when you see those movies where cats snatch a dude up and tie him in a chair about to torture him, they throw the plastic bag around his head and he's, right? He's suffering from hypoxia. There's a lack of oxygen getting to his tissues and getting to his brain, and because of that, he's going to suffocate. So people that are dealing with COVID-19, or at least what you're seeing on the news, are people that are suffering from hypoxia. The hypoxia that they're suffering from is due to the anemia. The anemia that they're suffering from is from the lack of iron in the hemoglobin. So then the next question is, well, if they got enough iron and they got hemoglobin, why is the iron not in the hemoglobin, KT? Because based on the 5G frequencies, and 5G does not mean 5 gigahertz, okay? We're gonna take care of that first, okay? 5G deals with generation because everything's about genetics, all right? So the 5G frequency, along with the viral infection, what ends up happening is it removes your iron from the hemoglobin. So now you have free floating iron in your blood, which is not a good thing. So then your body's going to store it in a form called ferritin. So most people that have COVID-19, if they get a blood test, they'll notice that their ferritin levels are extremely high. And that extremely high ferritin level that they have is showing them that they have a lot of free floating iron that is getting stored. So then what do you do? Like, what's going on? See, that's the problem. That's the point. People are getting put on ventilators. Ventilators. See, it's not a problem getting oxygen in. The problem is transporting the oxygen. So ventilators are not designed to transport oxygen from your lungs to your tissues. It's just designed to get oxygen in, to ventilate and get the flow going. But if you don't have the ability to bind the oxygen and get it to its destination, if your school bus has a flat, you know what I'm saying? And somebody comes on the bus and robs everybody and takes all your book bags, right? You walk into school, and when you get to school, you don't got no books. And a ventilator ain't gonna help you with that, okay? So what I suggest is that, as I stated to you before, we have to get back into the sun, because the sun nature has such a level of intelligence inherent in it. You understand that it's able to transport that information inside of you and bring you up to speed. That same mechanism that's able to create viruses inside of your body also has the same ability to get rid of those viruses by way of vitamin D. See, vitamin D, when you start creating it in your system, you start creating vitamin D receptors. Once you create a lot of vitamin D receptors, the vitamin D can enter in the cell and combine with mechanisms inside of your cell to get transported in the nucleus. Why does it want to go in the nucleus? So it can start to create enzymes and proteins and mechanisms to handle things, okay, such as antimicrobial peptides, okay? Now, when I was talking about the anemia situation and the deficiency that I'm speaking on genetically is something called glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency, G6PD deficiency. What is G6PD deficiency? It's something passed down genetically, and it's an X-linked disorder. What does X-linked mean? X-linked has to deal with chromosomes. Now, y'all might not understand a lot about genetics, but you do remember XX and XY when you was in school. Who's XX? Who's XY? Okay, I hope y'all got it right. XX is female, XY is male. So because a woman has 2 X chromosomes, that means if they have the actual gene inside of them, because they have 2 X chromosomes, there's a chance that they won't express it. But because a man has XY chromosomes, If he gets it, he got it. So do you notice when you looked at the news, did you see that they stated that majority of the people dying were men? Why was it men? Because with this deficiency, it's majority men that express it. Now, there's two types to this deficiency. There's two types of this particular disorder. There's an A type and an M type. The A type stands for African. The M type stands for Mediterranean. So African is going to mean Africa, African Americans, blacks, indigenous, melanated aboriginals. Mediterranean is going to mean South Asia, Iran, Spain, as well as Jews. Now, why does that make any sense? When you look at all the people that have been affected, these are the groups of people that you've been seeing in the news. Now, here in the States, African Americans, you got a lot more mixing going on. It's about 16%. So out of about 100 black folks, men, 16 of them are going to have this disorder. If you go in Africa, it's upwards of 20 to 40%. So out of 100, could be 40 people that have it. With Jews, it's 1 out of 2, upwards to 70%. So this shows why women aren't dying as much as men. This also shows why certain ethnicities and groups of people are suffering more than others, because they have a genetic disposition, they have an issue. Now I know y'all thinking, okay, G6PD, okay, KT, X-Link, okay, all that. What is this thing? What does it do? Well, the end result of this deficiency is hemolytic anemia. What is hemolytic anemia? I told you what anemia is. Hemolysis means the bursting, the destruction, the tearing up of hemoglobin. So your red blood cells, they get destroyed, they burst, they fall apart in your bloodstream, which is going to cause an enormous amount of inflammation, and you're going to have raised iron and raised ferritin levels, as I stated before. Now, specifically what happens with this deficiency is the fact that you have an immune system, and there's a certain molecule that you have that really helps a great deal. And I know you've heard of this one before, glutathione, okay? You use cysteine, a sulfur-containing amino acid, in order to create this. The problem with glutathione is it's kind of like a one-shot gun. You know what I'm saying? You put some ammunition in a one-shot gun, you cock that thing back, bah! That's all you get, right? It does the job, but you have to reload every time. So glutathione gets oxidized, and it needs to be in a state called reduced. And the difference between oxidation and reduction is the same difference between getting paid and having to pay. So when I say something is reduced, just like Sabi would say eat alkaline foods, what he's saying and what the reducer is saying is that I'm receiving electrons, or I'm receiving payment. I'm getting a check that I could go cash. Eating acidic foods or being oxidized is actually paying a bill. So by eating that food, you're actually giving up money or giving up electrons. It's a loss. So what happens with glutathione after that one shot, bah! What ends up happening is it gets oxidized, and you need an enzyme called glutathione reductase to reduce it. Well, glutathione reductase gets its energy from a molecule called NADPH. NADPH is a carrier of high energy. It receives its energy from G6PD, glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase. So when you have a deficiency in G6PD, you don't have the necessary mechanism to keep NADPH powered up. And if you can't keep NADPH powered up, if it can't hold electrons, if it can't hold the sun in its hands, then it can't transport that energy to the reductase of glutathione. Thus, glutathione is going to stay oxidized. So that means you're going to keep on tapping into your bank account. You're going to keep on pulling all your money out All your reserves, your 401k, the money you saved up for the house, the money you saved up for your children going to college, all that money's getting taken away until the point you're broke. And broke represents what? Organ failure, breakdown, because all tissues are fed by the bloodstream. And if the bloodstream loses its magnetic field, which is kept in effect by way of the iron, which is magnetic, then you have a serious, serious problem. You're dealing with the pollution of the earth, the pollution of the air, the pollution of the water, the food you eat. Everywhere you turn around, you have a bombardment of toxic chemicals wreaking havoc on the system and on the body. You have to make better choices in order to deal with that, because your body, your system, along with connecting with the earth, provides you with an opportunity to give you the necessary intelligence and information to deal with anything coming your way. See, you have to understand at the end of the day, you are the disease. You are COVID-19 and you are the coronavirus. And if you get an understanding of that, then you won't look anywhere else for the cure other than yourself. Now, I want to let y'all know, if y'all want any further information from me, all you got to do is go on YouTube, KT the Arch Degree. I'm also KT the Arch Degree on Instagram. You'll find me on Patreon as well, where you could dive in deep, get my deep in the mud stuff, and if you're looking for any products, you would go to ktthearchdegree.net. That's where I'm spending all my days in the lab whipping up them products that I know going to be effective to your system. So I want to thank all of y'all for joining me. I'll see you next time. Peace.